Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. People who almost were killed. What were your last thoughts before almost dying? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I had a stroke, and on the way to the hospital, I was sad that if I died, I'd never have a chance to tell my best friend how much she meant to me and thank her for all of her support and kindness. I was more sad about that than the prospect of dying. Luckily, I lived, so I told her that. Shocked when I first realized what was happening, then just a lot of peace. Peace like I had never felt before. Then, for some completely unknown reason, my attacker just turned around and left. This was a few months back, September 2021. I was headed home after a dinner with my wife, 18-month-old daughter, and a family friend of ours. We were going 65 miles per hour down the interstate when two other cars got into a brief altercation in the lane to my immediate left. Two cars do not fit into one space. My back left bumper got hit, and I ended up losing control, spinning wildly, and then sliding sideways down the grassy embankment on the right side of the interstate, before going backwards into a ditch and stopping among some trees. My car had missed smacking into a roadside passenger side first by 5 feet. My only thoughts were concern for my family and my friend. I was screaming, "Oh my God!" But my mind was going, "Let them be okay. Let them be okay. Please let them be okay." My 18-month-old daughter, on the other hand, looked at us wondering why the ride suddenly stopped. It's interesting to me how a subject that could be really dark has almost a lightness to it. A lot of these reflect the ideas of family and love, so I kind of dig that. The calm, simple thought, Derek's not that bad. When I almost got killed with my coworker Derek, who we all hated for some reason, I just stopped hating people that day, realizing even the most annoying people aren't that bad when you're about to die together. I was in the rear passenger seat of my parents' car while we were driving to dinner on Thanksgiving 2016. As we were turning left at an intersection, I saw a car flying directly at us in oncoming traffic, and right before we were hit, I said, "Well, we're dead." My world completely turned into a beige color, which I think was the color of the airbags, and we spun and spun for what felt like an eternity until we crashed into a tree. All my ribs were broken, and I had a lacerated liver. The ER doc came in and said that I was lucky son of a... because apparently my ribs all collapsed inward in such a way as gears might turn without actually impacting each other or puncturing any organs, which was apparently very unlikely, and by all rights I should have died. It was very strange and surreal, several seconds of knowing I was about to die and having absolutely no control over the situation. I was in a car accident when I was 18. As I lost control, the car was drifting from one side to the other for what felt like an eternity and was ultimately to be stopped by a ditch and a big tree. The whole thing probably only lasted a few seconds before the car flipped over and I lost consciousness for a moment. But I remember thinking, "Oh God, this is actually happening." And as I processed what was going to happen next, this is going to hurt. In the end, I only had whiplash and some bruises while my car was totaled, but I was absolutely convinced that this was going to be the end. After the adrenaline wore off, I broke down crying and felt incredibly relieved that I had decided to not take my dog with me. Something had stopped me from bringing her that day, and I'm still so thankful for that. Been a victim of a home invasion before, and honestly my only thoughts were to protect my little cousins. The adrenaline of escaping and running to the nearest store with them didn't make me realize I was cut, which I initially thought was made up for movies. Glad I haven't lived there in 3 years, and to this day I'm too afraid of living in houses, so I live in an apartment. This is going to hurt. I hope my son isn't the one that finds me. I was checking on a newly born calf when the mom turned and charged me unexpectedly. I'm usually quick enough to step aside and dodge, but I stepped in a hole and fell instead. The cow ran right over the top of me and stomped on my chest. That should have killed me on the spot, but I was about 3 feet of fresh snow, which gave me just enough margin to be severely bruised instead of crushed. I had to crawl back to our house on my hands and knees, where it hurt to move for several days. I got shot through the pelvis, nanometers from my femoral artery. Blood was still shooting out of me like a turbocharged sprinkler. As I was laying in the back of the ambulance looking at the gray 70-watt, thinking these are my last moments, all I could think about was all the things I wanted to do and how I wouldn't be able to now. I saw all the faces of those I loved and those I wish I got to see one last time. Do the things you only dream of. Tell everyone you love them constantly. Don't spend your life waiting. It's up to you to take it. Amen. This truly is sage advice. Really, get out there. Do the things you want to do, because before you know it, you won't be able to. So go. Now. One word. Damn. Then just blurry mental images of my immediate family for a few seconds before blacking out. Really anticlimactic. There was surprisingly little emotion associated with the experience. Overdose. When you abuse hard drugs for a while, you know death might be just around the corner. So it's no surprise when it comes, or you think it does. It's not all like a healthy person having a random stroke or something, which would be terrifying. I was hiking in the mountains and slipped on a rock. I fell into a very quickly moving stream that turned into a 100-foot drop-off about 55 yards, 50 meters downstream from where I went in. I think my exact thoughts were holy F, holy F, holy F, until the moment I was able to grab onto the side of the rock wall and climb out of the water. I was able to find a small ledge and then had to jump back over the stream to get to safety. The jump was not large, but I was cold, wet, and exhausted from climbing. Scariest 4-foot leap ever. I suffered a really bad asthma attack when I was alone at home. I was on the floor because I couldn't stand or even sit up. Even though I was breathing in and out as hard as I could, I still wasn't getting enough air. It was like breathing through a thin straw. I was unable to shout for help or crawl to my phone to dial 911. I was sweating, and my mind was racing a mile a minute, nearly panicking. After a while, I started to get tired and figured maybe if I take a nap it'll be okay after I wake up. Of course, I immediately realized that I wouldn't wake up if I did. That's when I became defiant against God, the devil, the universe, well, against whomever or whatever was trying to kill me. I was determined to live. I thought about curling up in my nice cozy bed with some soothing music on while reading a novel. I told myself that I'd be fine and I'd get through this. It lasted for about an hour and a half. I almost drowned in a whitewater rafting accident. It's very difficult to describe what I felt. There was a sensation of panic, but also one of surrealism. It didn't feel real, but it did. I also remember being able to reach my hands out above the water and having an all-encompassing yearning to be able to breathe. The combination of hypothermia, water temperature 35 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 degree Celsius for our friends who use a better system of measurement, and near drowning was a mind F. In January 2020, I and several others, including my wife, were caught in a bad snowstorm on the Langjökull Glacier in Iceland for 12 hours in minus 20 Celsius temps with winds of 105 miles per hour, 168 kph. We had been on a snowmobile trip where the storm had come in really quickly. Being trapped in the ocean with no visibility, we used our snowmobiles as cover from the elements. Eventually, I'd passed out and then awoken to being up to my neck in snow, which actually insulated me from the weather. I had protected my face from the weather with my hands as my visor had broken off my helmet prior to the snowstorm. After 12 hours, I started to drift off again and had the most serene feeling, having accepted my fate. I told my wife that I loved her and thought of my kids and how much I'd enjoy seeing them grow up. Unbelievably, at that very moment, a guy from Iceland Mountain Rescue appeared on his snowmobile and coordinated a rescue effort for us. The normally 1-hour trip to the hospital took 7 hours. I count myself very lucky. I was a first responder on the side of a road for a car accident. Multiple vehicles were on the side of the road, all with emergency lights on. A car lost control, going highway interstate speeds. I was providing first aid to a victim of the accident beside our vehicle. The vehicle that lost control perfectly split 2 emergency vehicles that were about 1.5 car lengths apart and went down the embankment. Honestly, my thought process at the time was scary rational. I was analyzing the path of the incoming vehicle, determined it was a threat, called a warning to the responders down below, calculated the odds if I was outside the vehicle during impact or inside the vehicle without a seatbelt, decided I was better off inside the vehicle during impact and jumped in. That took place over like 1 second. After that, I kept going. I'm okay, the victim okay, and then decided to check on the person who lost control. Evidently, they went down into the ditch, kept driving, got back on the road, and kept going, lol. It wasn't until I got home from our call that night that it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had family and kids. I felt like a bad father for putting myself in the situation. My wife, I'm sure, would have understood, but the kids, that hurt my heart. I wonder if the driver who lost control and almost hit you lost control because he wasn't paying attention to driving, but rubbernecking and looking at the accident. Almost drowned at the beach when I was a kid. Possibly because I wasn't fully aware of the danger, the full concept of death. I may have had it a lot easier on the not panicking side of things. I got hit by a massive wave and hit over the head by a surfboard. I remember tumbling under the waves and hitting the seabed a few times, which hurt, but then my mind filled with a white haze. No fear, no pain, no real understanding of what was happening. Then I recall my mom whacking me on the back while holding me up by an arm. Then the desperation came to cough the water up as fast as I could so that I could cry to let her know she was hurting me. Her own panic meant she really whacked me hard a good few times. The near drowning wasn't an issue, the whacks were. I messed up a decent-sized BMX jump in the woods behind my house. I came off sideways and went through the air into the woods to the side of the trail. As I neared the ground, I could see a stick protruding from the ground angled at me. It was a strange sensation for sure. It wasn't life up until that point flashed before my eyes, but I had so many new original thoughts in that fraction of a second, like minutes worth of brain function in a nanosecond. I saw the stick go into my chest, Final Destination style, and I saw myself in the hospital. I saw my parents dealing with me being dead. It was actually incredible, but I was able to adjust and the stick was right there against my chest when I was done landing, and it didn't stab me. So, interesting perspective. I was a paramedic at the time. All I had going through my head as it happened was, based on my religion, I get to kill you, repeating over and over, his words before he attacked me. Once he left, I'd been stabbed 6 times and left in a ditch on the side of a highway about 45 minutes outside the city. It was 3 a.m. No chance anyone was going to come by, and even if they did, I wouldn't make it 5 minutes, let alone 45. Basically, I started going into medic mode, diagnosing myself and being very calm. I basically realized how I was bleeding to death, how I have spine damage, and so I need to stay calm and just wait. I knew my chances as 0 and basically just counted down the minutes. My goal was to make it to 5 and let myself pass out, knowing I won't wake up at 3 minutes. Woke up in a hospital very, very confused, lol. What happened? I used to operate a 793 Caterpillar. It's a heavy equipment larger than most houses. You can Google if you don't believe me. I was headed uphill to a dump site, and the newest trainee was heading down unloaded. It was raining, and the earth we worked on was mostly clay, so when he started turning sideways, the trainee froze. Imagine a piece of equipment larger than a house sliding sideways and veering into my side of the road. I had about 180 tons of material in my bed, going a little over 4 miles per hour. I couldn't dodge if I wanted to. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and held my breath, and nothing happened. I opened my eyes and they were gone. When I closed my eyes, the trainee hit a divot in the road that angled her into the berm, missing me by literal inches. For clarity, if 2 haul trucks were to hit each other head-on going 5 miles per hour, the operators would be soup. This one I still occasionally think about, and it still keeps me up at night.